The strongest species in the galaxy feared only one name, Kravari. They came from a planet of firestorms, bone-breaking gravity, and creatures with venom so strong it melted steel. Their world was a death world, and they survived it not by kindness, but by crushing weakness. No species dared challenge them. No alliance ever said no. They ruled through fear, strength, and cold logic. For thousands of years, the Kravari believed one thing: we are the deadliest beings in the galaxy. Until one quiet day, a ship appeared. It was small, slow, and unarmed. It came into Kravari space without permission. No shields, no weapons, no armor. At first, the Kravari thought it was a mistake, but then came the signal. A calm, strange voice echoed across their comms. We are humans. We come in peace. Kravari laughed. The High Council gathered, eyes full of amusement and curiosity. The War General Zarnuk sneered. Peace? He spat. Only the weak use that word. The youngest council member, Saren, tilted her head. Strange. The ship scans show no tech stronger than a farming drone. And yet, they are not afraid. General Zarnuk growled. Let them land. If it's a trap, we crush them. If it's not, we show them why we rule. The humans landed on the surface of Draxer, the Kravari's capital moon. Soldiers lined up, guns ready. Drones flying overhead. The ship door opened slowly. Out came 5 figures. No armor, no masks. Just plain clothes and calm eyes. One of them, a tall man with dark skin and a silver badge, stepped forward. I'm Captain Ilias Reed, he said. We're here to talk. The soldiers didn't move. Their claws twitched. One wrong word, and the humans would vanish in an instant. But Captain Reed didn't flinch. Behind him, a woman, Dr. Marie Chun, carried a small box. She opened it and pulled out a simple gift. Fruit, grown on Earth, bright red and glowing with life. A gesture of peace. The Kravari were confused. No fear, no armor, no demands, just a gift. We don't understand, said Saren finally. You come to us, like prey. What are you really? Captain Reed smiled. Survivors. Just like you. Later that evening, during the peace gathering, something unexpected happened. A young Kravari child, curious and wild, wandered too close to a live power core. The core sparked, then exploded. Smoke and fire burst into the air. People screamed. Guards froze. But before anyone could move, Captain Reed ran into the flames. No suit, no shield, just his body. Everyone watched in shock. The fire licked at his skin. The smoke choked the air, and still he did not stop. He reached the child, shielded it with his body, and carried it out. His arms were burned. His face was dark with ash. But his eyes remained calm. He handed the child to its mother and said quietly, He's safe. No one spoke. Even General Zarnuk was silent. Later that night, in a dark chamber beneath the palace, the council met again. The room was quiet, heavy. Zarnuk finally broke the silence. He ran into fire, for someone not of his kind. Saren nodded. And he did not ask for praise or reward. The oldest member, Korath, tapped his sharp claws on the table. I have seen many species, he said. Some are strong. Some are smart. Some are cruel. But never one like this. So soft, yet so fearless. Zarnuk growled low. They bleed like prey, but move like predators. Saren whispered, Maybe we were wrong. The council sat still. For the first time in centuries, the Kravari were unsure. They had always believed they were the only Deathworlders, the only ones who survived horror and turned it into power. But the humans smiled while walking into danger. They gave gifts instead of threats. And they saved the child of their enemy without question. Zarnuk leaned forward, staring at the recording screen. It showed Captain Reed standing quietly near the fire ruins, his arm bandaged, eyes watching the stars. The general's voice was quiet now. almost afraid. What are these creatures made of? The test of pain. The Kravari did not trust peace, and they did not believe in weakness, so even after watching Captain Reed walk into fire and carry a Kravari child back with burned arms, they still felt something was not right. It was not fear, not yet, but it was a question burning in their minds. What kind of beings were these humans, soft on the outside, but hard like steel inside? To find the answer, the Kravari High Council came up with a test one no outsider had ever survived. They called it the Trial of Korath, named after their oldest warrior, who once defeated a lava beast with his bare hands. This trial was held on Varnak, a moon with violent storms, poison winds, lava pits, and razor beasts that hunted anything that moved. No species had lasted more than 2 hours there. Even some Kravari warriors died during the test, but the humans agreed without hesitation. 3 humans volunteered: Captain Reed, Dr. Marie Chun, and a young engineer named Leo Tan. They were allowed no weapons, no armor, only their clothes and a small backpack of supplies. They were dropped onto Varnak as the sun rose red and heavy. The Kravari soldiers watched from above, flying in stealth ships, waiting to see how long the humans would last. Many bet they would not survive the first hour. Within the first few minutes, the toxic wind blew hard. It burned the skin and made it hard to breathe. Leo pulled out a small filter device and quickly helped the others strap it over their faces. Marie found shelter in a crack between rocks while Reed scouted the area. It was strange. They moved with calm, like they had done this before. As the wind picked up, one of the razor beasts appeared, long legs, sharp claws, and rows of teeth, dripping acid. It sniffed the air, then charged toward the humans. Marie screamed a warning, but Reed didn't panic. Instead, he grabbed a flare from the bag, lit it, and waved it at the beast. The light confused the creature, and as it paused, Leo threw a sharp stone into its eye. The beast roared in pain, then turned and ran off into the lava fields above them. In the command ship, General Zarnak watched with narrowed eyes. Most species ran from beasts. These humans fought back with nothing but light and stone. By the end of hour 2, the Kravari were silent. Not only had the humans survived, but they had started to build a small camp using rocks and vines to create walls and traps. They filtered water using a plastic sheet and caught small heat crawlers for food. Leo even made fire using a lens from his glasses. Hour 5 came, and the humans were still alive and calm. They took turns watching while the others rested. They worked together, without shouting, without fear, just quiet planning and trust. By hour 10, something strange happened. The Kravari guards who had once mocked the humans now leaned closer to their screens, eyes wide and alert. General Zarnak growled low under his breath and said, "They're not just surviving, they're adapting." On the second day, the lava flows rose, cutting off their escape route. But instead of panicking, Reed pulled out a map drawn from memory and led his team to a narrow cave passage. Only someone with fast thinking and calm under pressure could find it. Was as if Earth itself had trained them for this. Humans didn't just survive, they solved problems. They used their minds as weapons. By the third morning, the humans returned to the drop zone, waiting calmly as the pickup ship landed. When the doors opened, all 3 walked in with burns, cuts, and dirt on their faces, but their eyes were sharp and alive. Reed dropped a broken claw of a razor beast on the floor as a gift and said, "Is that all you've got?" The room fell silent. The Kravari were not sure if they had just witnessed a miracle or a warning. General Zarnak stepped forward and stared at the humans. There was no fear in his eyes, but there was something else, something new. Respect, maybe even doubt. He asked, "What made you humans so strong?" Reed looked at him, then answered quietly, "We come from a place that teaches pain. Early we learned to survive in fire, flood, and storm. But what truly makes us strong is we never leave each other behind." That line hit the Kravari like a storm. For all their strength, they ruled alone, fought alone, survived alone. These humans had survived the deadliest trial not by being faster or stronger, but by trusting each other and never letting one fall. Later that night, Zarnak sat alone in the war chamber. He watched the footage again, over and over, watching the humans help each other fight, Together build, together laugh. Even when the world around them tried to kill them, he had seen warriors who fought with rage and those who fought with fear. But never before had he seen a species fight with hope. Turned off the screen, leaned back, and whispered something he never thought he would say. Maybe, just maybe, we are not the strongest anymore. The power of kindness. The Kravari were not just warriors, they were survivors built by fire and forged in war. Their people had no word for mercy, only strength and fear for them. Kindness was weakness, and emotions were chains that stopped progress. And yet after seeing the humans survive the trial of pain, something began to change. It was small, like a quiet wind before a storm, but it was there. And it made the Kravari restless. They watched the humans closely, trying to understand how such soft creatures could survive a death world trial and still return with smiles and laughter. After the trial, the Kravari allowed the humans to stay in their capital city, Draxer Prime. Not as prisoners, but as guests. It was a test of a different kind. No fire, no beasts, just silence and observation. The Kravari wanted to know more about these strange beings, who claimed peace yet moved like warriors and bled like them, but healed like no one else. The humans began helping in small ways. First they repaired broken machines in the lower city machines even Kravari engineers had given up on. Then they taught basic first aid to young Kravari who had never seen healing used without cost. Then came the seeds. The humans carried small green plants from Earth in special containers. They asked to plant them in the Kravari soil. Most laughed, thinking the plants would die in such harsh ground. But within days the seeds sprouted. Not just one, but all of them, and the air around the garden felt different. Lighter, warmer, as if something inside the soil had awakened. But the biggest shock came one day in the outer sector. A young Kravari miner was trapped under a collapsed wall. Sharp metal had pierced his leg, and toxic gas leaked into the chamber. No one dared go in, not even his squad. They called for backup, but before anyone arrived, a human named Aiko sprinted into the ruins. She wore no armor and carried only a med kit and a breathing mask. The Kravari yelled it was suicide. The chamber would collapse more, but Aiko did not stop. She crawled through the debris, found the miner, gave him her mask, and stayed in the toxic gas for 13 full minutes while she cleaned his wound and stabilized him. When the rescue team arrived and pulled them out, she collapsed, barely breathing, but alive and smiling. The young Kravari grabbed her hand and asked, why would you risk your life for me? And Aiko simply said, because you needed help. The council held a silent meeting that night. Even Zarnak, the iron-hearted general, said nothing for a long time. The footage of Aiko's rescue played again and again. Her kindness was not weakness, it was strength. But a strength the Kravari had never known, and it scared them more than any weapon. Serene, the youngest council member, spoke first. What if this is their power? Not guns, not tech, but the way they care even for enemies. Korath the elder leaned forward and asked, what if kindness is their armor? The next day things began to shift. A group of Kravari children approached the humans with questions instead of fear in their eyes. They held curiosity. They asked about Earth, about animals and oceans and music and food. Captain Reed smiled and told them stories of snow and thunder and fireflies and forests not made of metal. And for the first time in generations, the Kravari children laughed, but not everyone was pleased. Deep within the shadows, a noble Kravari named Vorth watched with growing anger. To him, the humans were poisoned soft words, planting weakness into proud warriors, and he feared the day when his people would stop fighting and start feeling. He sent a message to the high command, warning them humans are not guests, they are seeds, and seeds grow and replace what was before. That night someone left a strange message on the humans' camp wall. It was written in red mineral dust, and read, leave now or be buried with your kindness. Captain Reed looked at it for a long time, then calmly wiped it away and planted another earth flower in its place from his tower. General Zarnak watched it all. He saw the message, he saw the flower, and he saw the humans choose peace again and again. And yet behind their soft faces he saw something darker, something stronger. They were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they had already seen war, tasted it, survived it, and chose something better. He turned to Saren and asked, "Do you think they are dangerous?" And Saren replied, "I think they are the most dangerous beings we have ever met, not because they destroy, but because they make others question who they are." Rezanok said nothing, but in his heart, he knew something terrible and beautiful had entered their world. The humans were not invaders, they were mirrors showing the Kravari what they could have been, and what they still might become. And, for a species built on power and pride, that was the most terrifying thing of all. The rage unleashed peace was never truly trusted on Draxxur Prime, not by the Kravari, and not even by the humans who walked its hard black soil. The silence between the two species had weight like a glass floor above. Lava beautiful, but waiting to break. The humans had shown strength in pain and power in kindness, and the Kravari had watched. With quiet confusion, some began to admire them, others began to question their own ways, but a few began to fear and hate, because fear is the shadow of change, and change was coming fast among those who hated. Was Lord Vorth, a noble born into blood and battle, a man who believed emotions were poison and mercy was treason. He watched as more Kravari children visited the humans each day, as soldiers smiled in secret when passing Earth's visitors, as his own son asked questions about a planet that sang through trees and danced with rain. Vorth had seen enough and decided to strike not with warships or armies, but with humiliation. It happened during the Sunfire Festival, a celebration where young warriors showed skill and pride before the council and the people. It was tradition to allow guests to observe, and the humans stood near the front, curious and calm. Reed stood beside Dr. Chun and Leo, watching the flaming banners rise into the sky. Children played drums, old Kravari veterans sang war hymns, and the air pulsed with pride. Then Lord Vorth stepped forward with his personal guards and a challenge. He pointed to the smallest human, a child named Sam, barely 12, who had come with the scientists to study alien plants. Vorth smiled a cruel smile and said, "Let us see if these Deathworlders have spirit." He threw a training blade at Sam's feet and said, "Fight or kneel." Crowd gasped. The council whispered it was not allowed to challenge an untrained guest, especially a child. But before anyone could react, Sam froze, eyes wide, lips shaking. He stepped back but stumbled and fell. The Kravari guards laughed. Then the air shifted. Captain Reed did not shout, he did not draw a weapon, he simply stepped forward, gently helped Sam up and handed him back to Dr. Chun. Then he turned to Vorth, and his voice was quiet but carried through the square like thunder and snow. "You dishonor your people by drawing blades on children." Vorth laughed and took a step forward. His guards followed. The Kravari crowd began to grow tense. Hands reached for weapons. Even Zarnok stood from the council seat, ready to order calm. But what happened next needed no orders and no war. Captain Reed walked forward slowly, eyes cold, and steps steady. His hands never rose, and yet before the guards could blink, he moved like lightning. A twist, a sidestep, a hand to the wrist, a foot behind the heel. In seconds, Vorth's best guards were on the ground, groaning, holding arms and legs that bent wrong but not broken, not bleeding, just disabled. With terrifying skill and absolute control, Vorth stepped back, stunned. His claws shook, but Reed did not touch him. He simply looked into his eyes and said, "If you ever raise a hand to one of ours again, you will learn what true monsters look like." The square fell into silence. Reed turned and walked back to his team, picked up the training blade, tossed it aside, and said, "We do not kneel, and we do not hurt the weak." Moment passed like a storm, but its mark remained. The Kravari had never seen such calm fury, such quiet dominance. There was no rage in Reed's face, only disappointment, and that struck deeper than any blow. Later that night, the council met once more behind closed doors. The footage of the incident played over and over. No blood, no death, just precision, strength, and terrifying control. General Zarnok leaned forward, eyes burning with new thought. He said, "I once believed rage was our fire, but these humans do not rage, they judge." And Axarine replied, "They do not kill because they are weak, they hold back because they are stronger than we understand." Even Korath, the elder who once crushed metal with his bare hands, whispered, "They are not here to fight, but if we force them to, we will not Survive it in the shadows. Lord Vorth nursed a bruised pride and whispered to his own guards. They smile, they heal, they plant, but inside they burn colder than any war we've known. In the center of it all, Captain Reed stood by the small campfire, with his team watching the stars above Draxer, silent, thinking, remembering maybe of a time on Earth when he had to do the same thing, protect someone who couldn't protect themselves. Maybe he had promised that day never again would he let strength be used against the innocent. The Kravari always believed rage made the warrior, but the humans taught them something new, that true power is not how loud you roar, but how far you go to protect without losing your soul. The council's decision chamber was colder than usual, deep beneath the high towers of Draxer Prime, where the Kravari High Council gathered. Ancient walls lined with weapons from forgotten wars. Light flickered across stone and steel, but none of it reached the hearts of the beings inside. For today, they would decide the fate of a species that had shaken their pride and broken their beliefs. The humans' General Zarnak stood at the edge of the circle, his hands behind his back and his thoughts louder than his voice. For days he had watched them, not as a warrior, but as a student. He had seen them survive pain, walk through fire, heal enemies, calm storms, and still ask for no reward. And now, after the festival, after the humiliation of Lord Vorth and the silent display of power that sent the entire crowd into silence, the council could no longer delay. Korath, the elder, spoke first, his voice rough like stone grinding on stone. We are not who we were a cycle ago. Before they came, we thought strength meant domination, but these humans confuse me. They are strong, yet they give. They are deadly, yet they build. It is dangerous to not understand what we are facing. Serene, the youngest, looked down at her hands, remembering the human child who cried silently after the festival, not from fear, but from shame. She whispered, what if they are not here to rule us, but to remind us of what we forgot? What if we were once like them before pain became our only teacher? Others in the council were less kind. Some shouted, they are spies sent to soften us from within. Others warned, they are liars wearing soft skin over cold machines. Some demanded proof that their kindness was not a clever trick, but every time doubt rose. Someone remembered a moment, a small one, a human sharing food with a hungry Kravari cub, a human repairing an old bridge that no one had used in decades, a human listening patiently to the stories of war told by an elder with shaking claws. And no one could find a lie in those moments. The council called for the humans. They were brought into the chamber, not in chains, but with guards watching closely. Captain Reed walked in first, followed by Dr. Chun and Leo and Aiko, who still limped from the gas chamber rescue, but smiled as if limping was just another step in the journey. Zarnak stepped forward and spoke, not as a general, but as a voice of a changing world. He said, your actions have changed many of us, but others still fear what they do not understand. Today, we vote on whether you are friends or threats. Speak now before judgment falls. Captain Reed looked around the room, calm, steady, no fear in his eyes, only truth. He said, we are not perfect. We have made mistakes. On our world, we fought wars. We lost people, we suffered. But we learned and we grew, and we chose to help rather than harm. We came here not to conquer, but to understand you. We came in peace, and we stand in peace still, even after what happened at the festival. Even after threats and stares and fear, we still believe in peace, because strength is not shown by how many you defeat. It is shown by how many you protect. The chamber was still then. A voice from the shadows asked, if you are strong, then why not destroy us and take what you want? And Reed replied, because we are not ruled by fear, we are guided by choice, and we choose to build, not break. Suddenly, the lights flickered, alarms blared across the capital, and a Kravari officer ran into the chamber, shouting, there has been an attack. Someone tried to poison the humans' water supply. We caught them, and they carried a council seal. Gasps filled the room. The humans looked at each other, but none moved, none raised their voices. Zarnak turned to the officer and asked who, and the name they gave was one no one expected. Vorth. The council erupted. Some demanded exile, others wanted silence, but Korath raised a hand and said, let the humans decide what justice means here. And every eye turned to Captain Reed. He paused, then said, back on Earth, We learned that revenge is easy, but justice is hard. We do not want exile or blood. We want truth. Let him face what he has done in the eyes of his people. Let them see the danger of hate and the power of choice. It was in that moment the council knew these were not just travelers from a distant world. They were carriers of an idea. A dangerous, powerful idea that strength could come with compassion and justice could rise from restraint. The vote began. One by one voices rang through the chamber. Yes, yes, no, yes, yes, until the final voice was Zarnok himself, and he looked into Reed's eyes and said, I was born to fight, but today I choose to listen. And he said yes. The humans were no longer guests, they were now allies, and their presence would shape the future of the Kravari forever. What makes a death world Earth? Stars above. Draxer had seen many things, wars, victories, silence and fire, but on this night they looked down on something rare, something that had never happened before in the history of the Kravari Empire. Humans standing before the Galactic Council, sharing their truth, not as warriors, not as enemies, but as survivors. It began with a question asked by a council elder from a distant water world, a voice that had trembled through 10,000 years of politics and power. You call yourselves Deathworlders, but your bodies are soft, your tech is simple, your smiles are open. What makes you dangerous? What makes you strong? Captain Reed did not answer right away. Instead, he touched a device on his wrist, and the walls of the chamber came alive with light and sound. Images from Earth flooded the council chamber, towering waves swallowing cities, firestorms dancing through forests, frozen lands where people built homes with bare hands, deserts where water was a myth and storms came with teeth and thunder. But even in the darkest moments, the humans shown in the images did not run. They stood, they helped. They built, they fought, not for conquest, but for survival and for each other. Dr. Marie Chun spoke then, her voice steady and low. We were not born to dominate. We were born into chaos. We learned to survive not just nature, but each other. War, famine, plague, injustice, but somehow we kept moving forward. We invented music in the middle of pain. We created art during loss. We built machines that fly and hearts that forgive. Leo stepped forward holding a stone from Earth. He said, this is from a place called Pompeii. Long ago, a mountain exploded and buried everything in fire, but people still live near it today because we are not afraid of danger. We are afraid of not trying. The chamber fell silent as the images ended and the lights returned to normal, and in that silence, something shifted. The Kravari, who had always believed they were the only true survivors, began to understand that survival was not just about strength or power. It was about endurance, about hope, about rising again, even after everything is taken from you. General Zarnok stood slowly. He had listened, watched, judged, and now he spoke not with anger or pride, but with something new, something rare in his voice. We always believed we were the only ones forged by pain, but we chose to harden. You humans chose to evolve. You embraced the fire and came out with open hands. We feared your kindness, we mocked your softness, but now I see it is not softness, it is control. You do not attack first, not because you cannot, but because you already know what war costs. From the side, Council Member Saren added, perhaps being a Deathworlder is not about your world, but what your world makes you into, and what you choose to become after it. And perhaps humanity has chosen better than most, but peace does not spread without resistance. And deep beneath the capital, Lord Vorth still plotted his revenge, shamed, broken, but not silenced. He had called upon old allies from forgotten wars, mercenaries who hated peace, who sold destruction across the stars, and they had answered not with messages, but with ships, dark, silent, fast approaching. Draxer, unseen. Humans did not know this, yet as they walked through the city, greeted now with nods and cautious smiles from Kravari workers and guards, the once cold streets were warming, not from heat, but from hope. Some Kravari had even started learning Earth languages. Others asked to trade food, music, stories, and the human camp had grown into a garden, a strange green place surrounded by metal and ash. It was in that garden that Captain Reed stood one evening, watching the sky, when the warning came, a sharp alert in his ear. A single word: unknown ships approaching fast. No flags, no signals, no reply. He looked up and saw the stars. Blink as if holding their breath, and he knew in that moment the test was not over, and maybe it never had been. They had survived the trials, they had survived hate and fear, but now came the final test, not of body, not of spirit, but of choice. Would they run? Would they fight? Would they show the galaxy what Deathworlders really looked like? When pushed to the edge, Reed did not speak. He simply tapped his cum and said, all teams to position, eyes on the sky. Protect the city, protect the people. And across the streets and rooftops, humans began to move, not with panic, but with purpose, and the Kravari, who had once doubted, who had once feared, began to move beside them, side by side, ready for whatever darkness was coming. Because now they understood. Humans were not strong because they were perfect. They were strong because they kept standing no matter what burned around them, because when the world turned to ash, they planted something green, and when the night fell, they lit a fire not to destroy, but to guide. And that is what makes a Deathworlder, not the world they come from, but the heart they carry through it, the legacy of humanity. The ships came without warning, black and silent, moving through the stars like blades. The skies above Draxor turned dark, not from clouds, but from the shadows of approaching war. The Kravari had seen invasion before, they had felt the burn of betrayal. But this time, something was different. This time they were not alone. Alana screamed across the capital. Buildings locked down, soldiers ran to their posts, but beside them moved figures once seen as soft. The humans, they did not hide. They did not retreat. They stood tall, calm faces, eyes on the sky, hands moving with practiced speed. This was not there. First Storm Captain Reed stood on the rooftop of the council tower. His team spread across the district, setting up defenses. Leo rerouted energy to shields. Aiko calibrated defense drones. Dr. Chun moved the wounded to shelter. The Kravari watched, learning not from words but from actions. They had trained to destroy, but the humans trained to protect, and now they were teaching without speaking. Enemy fleet sent a single message: no peace, no mercy, surrender or be erased. And in the heart of the council chamber, the leaders turned to the humans, asking not with pride, but with hope, what do we do? Captain Reed looked at them, not as rulers, not as aliens, but as people, and said, we fight, but not just for survival. We fight for the future you want to build. Because this is no longer just your world, it is ours too. The enemy dropped fire from the sky, buildings shook, streets cracked, screams echoed, but the defense held. Barely. The humans held positions under heavy fire, taking hits, covering Kravari civilians, dragging wounded into safety, using broken shields and broken arms to hold the line, and still they did not fall. Zarnok fought beside Reed, his claws slashing, his voice shouting commands as he bled beside the man he once called weak. And in that battle, he saw the truth. Humans were not unbreakable, but they were unwilling to surrender, even when everything burned around them. Final strike came, a massive blast, heading straight for the energy core. That powered half the city. If it hit, millions would die. There was no time to intercept, no time to plan, and that is when Aiko ran without a word, carrying a portable shield core, and jumped into the path of the blast, her body small, her steps steady. She activated the core and vanished in light. The city held, the people lived, and the sky slowly cleared. After the smoke, the Kravari and humans stood together, battered, bruised, mourning the ones they lost, but proud of what they saved. The council declared humanity not just allies but equals, and the Kravari people built a monument in the center of the city, not of weapons or warriors, but of a single hand reaching down to lift. Another years passed. The story spread across galaxies. Others came curious, afraid, inspired. They met the humans and found not monsters, not conquerors, but mirrors that showed what every species could become. Earth and Draxor built together, shared together, fought side by side, not just in wars, but in healing and exploration. And it was said that wherever there was darkness, a human light would eventually appear. And when asked what made them so strong, they never said weapons or tech or fury. They always answered the Samu, remember the fire, but we choose the garden. And in time the galaxy understood thought they were the only Deathworlders until they met Humanitune, learned what true strength looks like. End of story.